see the red light, Greg? Okay, now
we'll be on. We're on, Bob.
Blue-white breakdown, Maryland week. I'm Bob Flounders, joined by Dave Jones. It is a lovely Thursday morning. The weather's great. Dave, you seem like you're in chipper spirits. I'm glad to see it. It's Maryland week, Dave. Before we get to Maryland, we got to talk. We didn't get a real chance to talk. We got to talk a little bit about Penn State, Ohio State. I think the fans want to hear from you on that.
Yeah, explain what you guys were up against at Beaver Stadium, because I got a couple questions on Twitter and I tried to explain it, but
we desperately wanted to have a Zoom video with you and I, but with the protocols, the COVID protocols for a night game up at Beaver Stadium, there wasn't a lot of room to maneuver. There were still people that were writing on deadline when Greg and I were ready to do it, like around 1:15 in the morning. We probably could have done it, or Greg and I at least could have done it. I don't think we could have done it with you because we weren't allowed to kind of get in a.
And we usually moved to a radio booth.
And Greg and I would have disrupted everyone who was writing. So instead, we just did a 12-minute podcast while I drove in complete pitch black because it was much safer.
Oh, I didn't see that. So anyway, people were asking at Indiana. They allowed me to move to Steve and Jack's radio booth, visiting radio booth, and that's where we did it. That's where I did it. But
Steve Jones and Jack Ham, you big timers, for the people who didn't know.
They knew.
All right. Hey, listen. So Dave.
Yeah, the question.
Let's talk about Ohio State. My question for you is, I think I saw you tweeting about it. I have a funny feeling you mentioned it. Is Penn State ever going to be able to catch Ohio State in this crazy chase, the way that Ohio State recruits? Hold on, Dave. I just blew it again. Greg, edit this out.
Is that Tawny Katane?
No, it was somebody on. I thought I turned my phone off. Greg, I apologize. We lost momentum.
The women will not leave them alone.
Greg will edit that part out. But is Penn State ever gonna be able to catch Ohio State?
I wrote about this morning, as a matter of fact, and Dan Wetzel, I had a great conversation with him a couple of nights ago for about a half hour. He gave me the idea because it was on his podcast with Pat Forty, and that's a really good podcast. It's a fun podcast, and they did about 4 minutes on, people have been saying don't expand the college football playoff, actually contract it, because what are there, 3 teams that are here and everyone else is down here? Even Oklahoma, who keeps getting into it, can't win a game in it.
Yeah, they're out.
It's basically Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson every damn year. Mm-hmm. And people say, it should be contracted down to 3. Well, I think part of the reason, and this was Dan's idea, part of the reason that those 3 have gone so far ahead of the pack is the fact that the playoff is only 4 teams and they keep getting in it.
Right.
I saw for a fact, it with my own eyes a couple of years ago when I went down and saw Brian Bressie and his family. I mean, does he go to Clemson if they're not in the college football playoff? I doubt it. They were only on his radar because they got in it. Mm-hmm. Conversely, if teams like USC and Florida State after 2014, when they got it in 1 year, when Jameis Winston led them there, but not since, and Penn State, had they been able to get in it once or twice, would they have built some recruiting depth? I think the case could be made that they would have recruited a lot better, because kids want that prestige, they want that cred, they want that stage, that big stage to play on, not only to get their NFL money, but to build their brands, which is part of building your money once you get to the NFL. They're very cognizant of that, and everybody is funneling in to those 3 schools. Those 3 schools can get whatever they want simply because the playoff is too small. Yeah. If we had an 8-team field for not tons of other reasons, but if we had an 8-team field, I think recruiting would even out much more broadly. you'd have a lot more. You'd have more Pac-12 schools than simply Oregon getting in the top 10. I'm not sure how they're doing it actually, but USC's fallen way off. I think they're back a little bit this year, if I'm not wrong. But it's been very choppy for some other schools.
Yeah.
I think if you expanded it to 8 teams, then yeah, Penn State might be able to get over the hump. But they would have had bids in 2016 and arguably 2017 if the field was 8. And would they get Julian Fleming then? And you can make an argument they might have. Would they've gotten some other guys that Ohio State got? Maybe. But my question to you: did you see in the first quarter, when everyone was fresh, a great disparity between the gift, the talent on the field for that first quarter that we really haven't really seen Penn State in that kind of competition shock against Ohio State? That was the way I looked at it. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I did see a disparity. I didn't think it would be as wide as what I saw, but it was pretty shocking, especially at the line of scrimmage. Dave, not only would I say Ohio State is killing it recruiting wise, but those teams are also, if they want them, they're getting their pick of the litter with those graduate transfers or those waiver guys. I mean, it's all another form of recruiting. And as much as Penn State fans, I think, are still mad that they didn't get in the 2016 playoff after winning the Big Ten, those back-to-back 1-point losses, Dave, to Ohio State really kind of I think accentuated Penn State's recruiting demise. I think people saw that they had Ohio State down in both games, double digits, couldn't finish them off, and I think that's all a factor. If they win 2 of those 3 games, I think they're doing a little bit better. But
if they win 1, you know.
Well, I'm saying in addition to the 2016 game,
yeah,
I mean 17 or 18, if they just win 1, and they could say they won 2 out of 3, I just think that all of it is come back to bite them a little bit. I just don't know. I don't know how Penn State's going to catch Ohio State. A, the way that they recruit, and B, Ryan Day is a very, very good, especially an offensive coach. I was impressed quite a bit with the way they're developing players.
Well, it's pretty easy when you got all those tools, man. I mean, everything works. Everything works. And the one area I also want to ask you this: the one area that we didn't expect to be such a rout was Ohio State's offensive line against or Penn State's offensive line against Ohio State's defensive front.
They got beat up. They got pushed around. There were guys that Ohio State had that I had not even. Talking to our buddies at Cleveland.com, Doug Lamarice and Nathan Baird, Greg and I talked to them. They mentioned a lot of guys, but I'm pretty sure a couple of, when we talked about the defensive line, that defensive tackle who had 3 tackles for loss, I'm not sure that his name.
Idaho kid. Yeah. He's Samoan.
Those guys, and that number 0 who pushed Pat Fryermuth 8 yards into the backfield and almost decapitated Sean Clifford. I had not heard much about him, but it wasn't one series. It wasn't one quarter. It was darn near 80% of the snaps.
And it was Alabama level, was it not? I mean, it's not just fast. Penn State has gotten a lot faster under James Franklin.
Yeah.
It's big and fast together, which is hard to deal with, man.
Yeah. And then when you have Justin Fields, who is he was just unbelievable with some of the things he did. Dave, and this is the one thing I wanted to get to is,
do they keep Justin Fields? There's another one,
Yeah. This is the thing about Justin Fields, because I had talked about this, and Ryan Day is so smart. So in the horseshoe 2 years ago, he destroyed Penn State's defense running on 3rd and long, quarterback draws, 4th and 3, he runs for 22 yards. James Franklin says after the game, the difference in the game was Justin Fields' legs. So what does Ohio State do now that their wide receivers are back and he's more comfortable? They use the threat of him running the ball that had Penn State's linebackers on roller skates the whole game. The threat of him running the ball now is actually more dangerous than him running the ball, because he's that gifted of a passer.
And I'll tell you what Ryan Day won't do that Urban always did. Urban would go to that security blanket of
just
running the quarterback 15 times a game. Yep. Ryan Day is not going to get Justin Fields beat up.
No.
He's not going to do that.
I don't know how I don't see anyone in the Big Ten staying within.
Well, see, that's the thing. We're
Two
talking
touchdowns.
about the disparity between Ohio State and Penn State. Everyone else is down here. I mean, there's no one close to these guys. Did you watch Michigan?
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't watch it. I just saw it.
I knew that Minnesota's defense was really the factor there because they are pus right now. Their front seven is completely rebuilt. I mean, that could be the worst defense in the league. And in programs like that PJ Fleck has built, to his credit, you can't build them all at once. And sometimes you have to work up to a peak where everyone's mature, and then you're going to fall off. And it was inevitable that they did. But people were acting like Michigan's first game was, oh, they're back. Well, no. You know, you see them against Michigan State. They look like an ordinary offense with no juice, man. They're not going to beat Ohio State. I just can't even see it. I don't see it. So who's going to beat them? Indiana in Columbus? No. Michigan State in East Lansing? You know, you get to this point and you have to start conjuring back to 2015, which is what I did in the post-game reads. There's something. They got to get bored. They're going to have to beat themselves. And in 2015, they got bored.
Michigan State,
Ohio State got bored, and they were rolling over everyone. I went back and looked at the spreads in 20. I got them right here.
They were a better team than the 2014 team.
Yeah, I mean, this was the defending national titleists, and they got bored. They were in their league games. They were minus 22 at Indiana, minus 31 against Maryland, minus 19 against Penn State at home, the 38-10 game, minus 21 at Rutgers, minus 22 Minnesota, minus 17 at Illinois. They were just traipsing through these games. And then Michigan State, with a backup quarterback, got them on a raw day. I don't see that happening this year, but it's going to take something like that to get them, to trip them up.
Greg Picklin and I remember that Penn State, Ohio State 38-10 game. We stayed at arguably the worst nights in America, out in Columbus, because they had nothing else left. They were all booked up. They had like the Columbus Marathon in town that weekend. They had, I think the Blue Jackets.
Oh, I know where you were. You were up on 270, weren't you?
We almost didn't. We didn't survive the night. There wasn't enough antiseptic, and there wasn't enough cleaning solution. It looked like someone got murdered in the hotel room the night before.
Did you ever see Survive and Advance, the 30 for 30 about North Carolina State and where they stayed in Corvallis?
Yeah. Well,
the guys were going, there's mirrors on the ceiling in this place. This is where you bring a hooker.
That you just stirred quite a memory for me. But you talked about Minnesota's defense, and the reason that's a good segue is because I think you learned a lot about Minnesota's defense against Maryland last week.
Yes. And you could expect that too, although you didn't expect what we saw out of Talia Tagovailoa, because he had not been very good at Northwestern at all. They lost 43-3, looked like same old Maryland. He was throwing into double coverage, just tossing stuff downfield willy-nilly. And, it looked like the Maryland effect had infected him. Against Minnesota, and you got to take it with a block of salt because it's the Minnesota defense. But there were a couple times when there were free rushers coming in on him, and I made a point out of it in the power poll. I actually posted a picture of what was coming at him, and he just does a reverse pivot. He's out to shoot and runs for 39 yards down the sideline. He is really special, man. He could be one of the best quarterbacks in this league this year, and Penn State's got to be ready for him. I think they got to keep him in the pocket. Don't try to put too much pressure on him because he's slippery, man. He is hard to get a handle on. I think they need to contain him more than they need to pressure him and see if he has to throw into that secondary. Because I think Penn State's secondary is a strong point for them.
Yeah, their corners, especially their corners, they can get in trouble when they get the wrong person in the slot because teams will go right after Lamont Wade in coverage. He's a good safety, but I think there's some issues there. Ohio State and Indiana both went after him. Dave, do you like I just don't want to mispronounce his name, so I'm just gonna say, do you like Tua's brother better than Michael Penix, or are they just different?
They are different because Penix is kind of like a thoroughbred racehorse the way he runs. He needs a little time to get going. He can be slippery in traffic, as you saw on his run for the 2-point conversion that tied the game at Indiana. But Talia, whose nickname is Leah, that's what they call him.
Okay.
He is only 5'11". He's a lot smaller. He's kind of built like a pit bull, actually, but he's kind of built like Parker Washington, but has a lot of quickness. He has a lot of burst and a lot of electricity to what he does, and probably not as powerful an arm as Penix. But he also doesn't have to set up and take that long stride that Penix seems addicted to. So they're very different. But I think you have to be more aware of Tagovailoa getting out of the pocket and causing trouble than you do with Penix. Penix isn't going to try to do that. Penix is like halfway between Dwayne Haskins and Tagovailoa, if that makes any sense.
I got it. I got it.
And Tagovailoa is much more dangerous in the open field. He can make throws on the run. He made them again against Minnesota's defense. Penn State's defense is going to be much better than those guys, but you just got to be aware. And he's got weaponry too. He's got a kid that my nephew was the quarterback last year, so I know a lot about these guys. Dante Demas, number 7, and Jayshon Jones, number 6. Jayshon Jones got injured and he was out for the year last year. He got injured in August. He is really good. Both of those guys can play. They are serious wideouts that Penn State's cornerbacks, these will be very good matchups with Joey Porter and Castro Fields or whoever's out there.
Yep.
Those are 2 things to watch for fans. If you don't watch the ball all the time on passing downs for Maryland, watch those matchups because they're going to be very interesting. The other thing is Penn State's pass rush, which really didn't get home against Ohio State at all. They should get home against these guys. Shaka Toney should get home and bother him. Now, whether they choose to pressure Tagovailoa or simply contain him and make him throw into heavy coverage, that's a question for Brett Pry.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other Penn State coordinator, Kirk Sharaka. Not the fan base isn't necessarily very happy with him right now, but they Penn State, other than the first drive against Indiana, they have started very slow in the first half of both games. A lot of it might have to do with who they played, but in this day and age, you can't have 6 points at home against Ohio State in the first half, and you can't have 7 on the road or wherever against a team like Indiana. Is it as simple as the quarterback needs to play better, or do you think it's just about all of the stuff? It's just none of it's really meshing yet.
I think Kirk probably expected what we all did, that his offensive line was going to be a little better. Sean Clifford had guys in his face the entire game. Anyone blaming him or saying, "Hey, I think they ought to give Will Levis some snaps," I think that's nonsense. He played a really good game under trying circumstances. He didn't make many mistakes,
right,
and he got guys in his face constantly beating him up.
Right.
I thought he played a really good game, especially in the second half. And I don't know how you can blame Kirk when it's the second week of the season and you don't really know what you have on the offensive line until you play a team like Ohio State and you think you're going to be competitive, and then you're not. I thought he revised what he wanted to do in the third quarter. They got back into the locker room, and that offense played much better in the second half. I don't have any problem with Kirk Sharaka at all yet.
Yeah. How much longer, though, can Clifford go taking the punishment that he's taken, and also whether it's sacks or whether it's hits after, whether it's hurries, whether it's hits after he gets the ball loose, he's taken entirely too much punishment, and he technically has 35 carries after 2 games. It just seems like it's not a question of if, but when he's going to get what happened to him late last year is going to happen to him again.
Yeah, because he's not quick enough to avoid some of these hits. Plus, his demeanor
Yeah.
The way he is, it almost reminds you of Hackenberg sometimes. He's kind of defiant in the way he absorbs hits. And man, you can't have that at this level, not against good defenses. This one isn't a good defense, so he should have a better day this week.
Right.
But I agree with you. You can't have that happen constantly. The offensive line is the root of the whole thing. This offensive line ought to get push against this defensive line. They ought to be able to run the ball effectively. And I don't care if they've lost their first two tailbacks. Right. Devin Ford and even the guys behind them should be able to run the ball. And their wideouts should be able to have a really good day against this secondary. This is not a good defense.
I know.
It has leaks. It has targets of opportunity in the back four. This should be a lot of points for Penn State.
It's the Blue-White Breakdown with Dave Jones and Bob Flounders. We are almost 3/4 of the way through it. I haven't messed up with my phone in the last 10 minutes, so I'm optimistic. Dave, is this the last? I think Penn State's won the last 5 Maryland games, but it's the last 4 games especially have been non-competes. Why do you think Maryland has played some teams tougher in recent years that were pretty good? The Ohio State game in 2018. Every once in a while they can give a decent team a really good game. Has not happened with Penn State. Why do you think Penn State has just dominated these guys, especially the last 4 years?
Last year, I thought there was a serious intimidation factor. Plus, that team came apart when they got down 14-0 and they threw the interception when they looked like they were knocking on the door. Yeah. To me, that's a window into the leadership. And it was also a transition year, to be fair to Mike Locksley. I mean, he's taken over. I really wondered if they should have kept Matt Canada. I thought Matt Canada did a tremendous job the year before, and especially coming out of that horrific situation with Jordan McNair.
Yeah.
Matt Canada had nothing to do with it, by all accounts. He was blameless in that because he wasn't the coach yet. And I thought he deserved a chance. But this has been a leaderless program from the top forever. And I don't think you can say that about Penn State. I don't think you can say that about the players on the field. Now, Mike Locksley is really recruiting, so we'll see. But right now, Maryland's history has always been that when they get down big, they didn't quit last week, man. They were down 17. They were down 38-21 in the fourth quarter. Yeah. And granted, again, against a bad defense, but they kept coming. And PJ Fleck tried to soak the clock, which was a big mistake. If he could have, how you always talk about, boy, if they give the ball to Clifford here, he could run forever in some Penn State games. Tanner Morgan could have done that about 5 or 6 times, and he would have run all the way to Beltsville, Maryland. But they didn't do it, and they didn't kill the game, and Maryland came back. So maybe Maryland has a seed of enthusiasm in them that they think they can do something different. The key for Penn State is to step on them. You step on them early. They believe they have a heritage of losing. You just give them a reason to do what they usually do, and Penn State should win this game handily. But they do have a different kind of player in Tagovailoa. They've never had a quarterback like this. Even when the Ohio State game, which was 52-51 a couple of years ago. Yeah. Or they didn't have a quarterback like this. It was just basically Greg Schiano in a ill-equipped role as a defensive coordinator, and that Ohio State defense didn't play very well all year. This team can score points too. If you get into shootout with them, you're running a risk because they're going to believe they can score points against anybody. Penn State's defense, especially in the corners, has to lay down the law. Their pass rush has to get to Tagovailoa in a way that contains him. They got to force him up the middle, and Penn State's offensive line's got to show up. Those are the keys to me.
I agree. Before we get to our predictions, is there 1 or 2 players that have been in your mind through 2 games pleasant surprises? Whether, I don't know what your expectations were for them, but have either flashed or you're like, boy, they're going to be really, really good.
Joey Porter, man, you told me. And he just jumps off the field, He is very, very confident. you can see when a corner really believes in himself, and he's got good technique too. He's got swivel in his hips. He believes that he can explode in any second, any moment, and get upfield. So he's aggressive. He is right up on the receiver. Joey Porter's like that all the time. I'm like really, really impressed with him.
Yeah.
And I thought when you saw Jesse Luketa come on the field in the second half, Penn State's defense got a lot better real quick. I don't know what you thought about that.
No, you're right. They did miss him, and I do think he brings a presence, a physical presence, and a leadership presence.
Yeah.
The team. I think he's also a guy that can settle people down in the huddle or tell them to get their act together or hold them accountable. I think he'll play better. A guy that I have a funny feeling as the season unfolds is going to be a bigger part of the offense. I think that Parker Washington, not the biggest guy, but I think that he's going to be one of those guys that can get open almost all the time. He's not obviously very big. He's not very fast, but I just think they're going to need somebody other than, as great as Jahan Dotson looked against Ohio State, his best play, Sean Wade did not exactly play a bad game. He was right there on a lot of those.
It was
plays.
great. It was terrific.
But Jahan was out of his mind. He made some great catches, but it's not like there's a tremendous amount of separation. They're going to need a third component of the passing game.
And what do you think Parker Washington? What do you think Parker Washington's going to do? He's going to be a slot possession guy. Is he not?
He's going to be an underneath possession guy that I think he's built so he can.
He's built like a pit bull.
He's built. No, I don't want to. So he's built like a good slot guy. You think of a guy like Wes Welker, like build wise. In other words, they're built to take a little punishment, but they're very quick. They don't usually take a lot of punishment. And I just think they move the chains. Cole Beasley is another guy in the NFL, is a little bit like that. But I think Parker will be better in the Penn State.
And fearless, right? You think he's fearless as far as taking a hit?
I think that Penn State's coaching staff saw that in him.
Yeah.
And when James and Sean both talked about him, praised him in the camp leading up to the season, I'll be looking to see him maybe expand his role. But still, 0-2, Dave, is 0-2. There's still some tricky games left on the schedule. I don't know if you would view this game, 3:30 Saturday at Beaver Stadium, as tricky, but how do you see it, and what do you think's the key?
I told you the keys, so those are the keys. But I think those three things have to happen for Penn State, and they can win this game fairly easily. I can't remember what my prediction was now. Let me look it up. You guys remember? It was here. I got it right here. It's Penn State 45, Maryland 28. What did you have it? Do you remember what you had it?
Yeah, I had it 41-20. I picked that score not on purpose, but I had the total in mind, and it was right around 60. I feel like it's going to be a pretty nice day in
good track. Yeah.
And I do think that Penn State's offense is going to want to score points, and they've actually scored pretty much the last couple of years. They have been able to score points. Maryland scored 20 points in the last 4 games against Penn State total.
This is not going to be that. I guarantee that this is going to be more of a shootout. Yeah.
I know, but I just think they just need a little help from Maryland to get this game over the total. So I said 41-20. I think that Penn State is not going to solve all that ails them Saturday, but I think the stage is set for them to take a kind of a big step in the right direction.
What is the total?
60. It was 60 when I saw it.
Yeah, I'd go over that. I've got some. Can we talk about the Big Ten before we leave?
Let's do it.
I'm going to do a lines. I'm going to go back to doing picks or just a kind of an analysis of the Big Ten lines. There's 6 games, and you tell me who you like.
And I am free to use it against you.
Huh?
I'm free to use
this. Don't you point at me.
No, go ahead, Dave. By all means,
did I tell you I did that I did that to Frisco, and he thought I was serious?
Keep digging, Dave.
Now I'm going to go over the lines. You tell me who you like, but I'm going to do them all in a row. I don't know. Okay. You've seen them. You've seen them, haven't you?
I have not seen them. That's even better.
Okay. All right. Michigan at Indiana. What would you make that? And then I'll tell you what it is.
I would make that Indiana. I'm going to say Indiana 3.
That's it. Well, Indiana plus 3.
No, I would favor them, honestly. I think
No, it's Michigan favored.
Yeah.
So I would take Indiana there. So you
Okay.
missed it completely. Yeah,
Thank
you yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'll admit it. No, I think Indiana should be a 3-point favorite.
Well, I think that should be a push, you know,
Yeah.
or I mean, that should be a pick 'em. Rutgers at Ohio State.
Woo! That's another game, Dave. It's tricky.
What
It's
was that?
game.
What were you doing, the Tim Curley?
Woo! I know that this line I think is somewhere like in the high 30s. I did see that, I believe.
That's right.
I think that you will see Rutgers cover this game only because I think Ohio State, and they just kind of want to get through this game, and they're on.
Yeah, they're going to want to get through the season. That's what I'm telling you. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would. Is it like 30?
What is it?
38. Like 38.
37.
Yeah.
37.
I'd probably 37 points.
Okay, so you're going to take Rutgers there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch it. Maryland at Penn State, you are taking Maryland because it's I'm not going to tell you. What is it?
Well, I know that I saw it on Monday at like 25, but I don't know where it's gotten since then.
24.5. So you're essentially taking Maryland and Soma.
It's just a lot of points for a team that hasn't put it all together yet in Penn State.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think Maryland's going to be afraid of them this year, really. This is the game I like. I really like this game. I'm very interested in this game. Minnesota at Illinois. What do you think of that? Where would you put it?
I think that Illinois can score some points. I think I would advocate for the over. Even if it's like 98 in that game, I'll take. I would say the line is probably Minnesota is probably -2, and I think that Illinois will probably win by 7.
Minnesota -7. That's crazy. That's like begging you. That's one of those games where you're going, well, what am I not seeing here? Illinois is playing a backup quarterback because their transfer out of Michigan got COVID. So they've got this kid. I'm sure you didn't watch it, but they got this kid named Karan Taylor, who's like nitroglycerin. You talk about Tunga Vailoa. This kid, but he's just as likely to explode on Illinois as he is on the opponent. But I think he could have a huge day against that defense. I just think Minnesota is going to be reeling after that thing last week at Maryland. This to me is too good to be true. I'll take all of those 7 with Illinois. And,
all right, we got about 60 seconds. I'm looking at the remaining time. We have 60 seconds, so get to it.
What are you, mission control?
No, I'm looking at there's a little.
Michigan State at Iowa. What do you make that?
I would make it Iowa 3. Michigan State will let down. Iowa will weasel their way out of it. They're going to win like 21-16.
Michigan State's getting 6.5. I like Michigan State there. And you do too, I guess. And finally, your Nebraska Cornhuskers at Northwestern.
Ooh, they're going to give up a lot of yards on the ground. I'd make Northwestern 6, and I think they win by 10.
It's only 3.5, and I love Northwestern there. All right, we're done.
A pleasure as always, Dave. We will chat soon, hopefully Saturday.
Flounders, you are a delight.
All righty then.